And a good Wednesday to you, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in here for a look at your extended forecast. You can see over here on the side of the screen, I do have my computer with me because we do have some weather ongoing right now that I do want to break down. So I'm going to kind of switch some of our sky camera views and we'll play around with the satellite and radar imagery to break down where some rain is currently located. But first things first, let's go ahead and talk about some of the totals that we have seen at least over the last 24 hours. Now, right before the stream, I got to thinking I probably should have popped up the 48-hour rainfall totals graphic because that would be more accurate of this weather system that we did have early yesterday morning, continuing all throughout the afternoon, into the evening, and now into this morning. But we can see that higher totals are going to be found farther down to the south. And like we were talking about as of yesterday with those sprinkle chances, we could see a couple of them creep farther up to the north, but it's only going to be a select few spots that really catch the rain. And it looks like that's going to be found in some of these brighter blue spots that we are seeing across Crawford County, Taylor County, maybe into the northern edge of Peach County. So 1.3 inches of rain right here on the Crawford-Peach line. This is pretty close to I-75 after you get past the Byron exit and it starts to dip down the hill. Northern Taylor County, 1.2 inches of rain. Most other areas only recording a couple tenths of an inch of rain. Across Macon County, only a trace of rain in Perry, trace of rain in Warner Robins. Just across the county line over into Twiggs County, a pixel that we got about 3/4 of an inch of rain. And then you get down here into Cochran where we do have another pixel of about 1/4 of an inch of rain. The most widespread, more impressive rainfall totals did come in our southern row of counties. So Chris County, Wilcox County, Southern Dodge, Telfair, Wheeler, and Montgomery counties. But still, none of these totals were above the 1 inch mark. At the most, we saw about 3/4 of an inch of rain in areas right around Cordele. And then we have found another pixel there to the south of Idalia in southern Toombs County, 0.7 inches of rain. It's not a whole lot. It's not very substantial, but this is just continuing to supplement on top of the more impressive rainfall totals that we have seen over the last week. And for the month of May, at least here at Middle Georgia Regional Airport, we did not record much. It was past at least a trace of rain. We had 1/100th of an inch of rain, so it did add an extra little bit of a tally to our total for the month, which is now 3.38 inches of rain as opposed to 3.37. Nonetheless, we're just over 3 and about 1/4 of an inch. And then you can see for the average month of May rainfall that we typically see, we're already above that average mark, and we haven't even officially hit the halfway point in the month of May. So now our total is up to, I believe, 6 days that we have recorded some rain. The 1st, the 2nd, the 6th, the 7th, the 9th, and now the 12th as of yesterday. Doesn't look like we'll have anything in the cards throughout today, but maybe a sprinkle that does record just a drop of rain that might, or probably wouldn't even add on to our total that we've seen so far. But the records, once again, set back in 1957, nearly 12 inches of rain, about 1 foot of rain that we did receive back there around 70 years ago. And your year departure actually did get a little bit lower, even despite the fact that we had 100th of an inch of rain, 4.06 inches below where we should be. And for the month of May, we're creeping closer to below around 2.5 inches of rain, but we are still 2.5 inches above where we should be at this point in May, roughly. And like I mentioned yesterday, even if we don't get a single drop of rain for the rest of the month of May, we are still going to have a green box on top of that month, which would be the first time that we are going to have one of those in 8 months' time. I have to go all the way back to August of 2025 in order to find the last green box that we did have. So your rain chances are fading away as we go into the end of the work week, but not completely out of the picture just yet as of around close to the midday hour here this Wednesday. It will be a cooler finish to the work week, and cooler is going to be a relative term. We'll talk about which times of the day you are actually going to feel some of those cooler temperatures as opposed to the afternoons, which are still looking nice and warm. But return of the 90s, that's going to be probably your main headline that we do have weather-wise. It's honestly been the main headline since it popped up on the end of the 7-day forecast, because now we're getting into kind of final season for all of you high schoolers, middle schoolers, maybe even elementary schoolers. And of course, you will eventually get into graduation time coming into probably the extended portion of your forecast, just past your 7-day forecast. So you're wanting to know what that forecast is looking like, when we're going to welcome in some of that warmer weather, because summertime is fast approaching here in Central Georgia. So return of the 90s on Saturday, and it doesn't look like it's just going to be one day that we're in the 90s. It is looking to be a prolonged stretch of some 90-degree high temperatures at long last. So here's a look at downtown Macon in the top left. It does appear rather gloomy, but some images of some sunshine and some blue sky that is trying to be visible right there. It does look like maybe our camera is freezing up just a little bit. Maybe it's back on track now where you can see the smooth motion of all these cars up and down First Street. Warner Robins, it does look like actually kind of mostly cloudy skies, but we still see plenty of blue sky, and that's some pretty thin cloud cover that we're dealing with down there in Houston County. Same story down here at the Georgia National Fairgrounds. The winds continuing to blow those flags out in a direction away from the camera, so some form of an easterly, more of a northeasterly component with your winds. This is a bit of the outlier, and this is why I wanted to pull my computer over here to give you a better image of what exactly is going on in downtown Dublin. So I'm going to switch it over to this website real quick, minimize that window, and we can talk about what we're seeing here. And this has been the story pretty much for most of the morning. It started out as just some on and off sprinkles, but now it actually looks like a consistent steady shower going through the downtown corridor, even some puddles right there that are starting to bubble up over here on the side of the road, all these wet sidewalks, and obviously this grass getting some much needed hydration. But overall, I think the drainage system here in the downtown Dublin roads is just not really the best. Anytime we have any form of substantial rain, we do see these puddles over here on the sides of the roads. But it does emphasize why you need to take it a little bit slower if you are heading out and about, maybe for that lunch break as we are getting close to midday right around this time frame. But also make sure that you're grabbing the rain jacket before heading out the door in areas like Lawrence County later on this afternoon. So current temperatures, you can see a 70 up here in Macon, 70 in Montgomery, pretty similar to all of our neighboring states and states maybe even well over to the west. It is a tad bit warmer over into Texas, 77, 78, and 79 across Dallas, San Angelo, Houston, and down to Laredo. Holding on to an 84 in Orlando, and you can definitely see a fine gradient all across the southern end of the Florida Peninsula. It's more of a orange color transitioning into a yellow, transitioning into a green up here into Georgia. 77 in Jacksonville, 68 in Panama City, a little bit cooler, but it doesn't look like too many areas are cooler than, say, the mid-60s here as we go into your Wednesday. Down in the southeast corner of the United States, 70 in Macon, matching the number in Columbus, Albany, Dothan, Montgomery, so all of our neighboring cities over to the west. Actually cooler in Vidalia for a change, and you'll see why that is in just a moment. 71 in Columbia, 71 in Charleston, 72 in Myrtle Beach, 64 in Starkville, actually the coolest temperature that we can spot. And then you can see that Jacksonville in the upper 70s going to be a bit of an outlier, 75 in Brunswick, so kind of close to that number. Here's a good look at your temperature map, a dividing ground of the 60s and the 70s, actually seeing signs of a warming trend and already popping up to the 70-degree mark in Macon, which we did not do until later in the afternoon as of yesterday. 72 in Butler, that appears to be the warmest temperature, but there are more 70s present over to the west. Remember that when we pop up your satellite and radar, which is going to be kind of your main talking point with this extended forecast. Winds and wind gusts still maintaining that east, but more of a northerly direction with these winds. I think they're going to have more of a north and northeasterly direction as we go throughout today. Anywhere from a 5 to a 10 mile per hour breeze. You see this breeze down here in Vidalia, a little bit gustier, but overall not looking as gusty as those winds did look as of this time yesterday. And we do hold on to some humidity down here in the southern portion of the state of Georgia. That's where you're starting to see the light green, eventually some of the darker green shades over here in these areas that we were just talking about on the temperature map that are a little bit warmer. So closer to Brunswick, closer to St. Simons and Jacksonville. That's where we see some mid and some upper 70s as opposed to somewhere in the 60s and the 70s across the rest of the area. And that's what the dew point temperatures are doing as well. 50s, even all the way up to the north. And just like we were talking about yesterday, farther down to the south, you are holding on to a little bit of more moisture in the air, and that's correlating to some better rain chances here as we get into the 11 a.m. hour. So satellite and radar imagery. It is a bit gloomier than what we had a glimpse of early this morning. We actually had a pretty decent gap in the cloud coverage, and Some peaks of some of that widespread blue sky in Warner Robins, Perry, even some glimpses of it in Macon. Well, now it looks like some of these upper level clouds have crept back into the forecast. It's not necessarily too dense in nature. The denser cloud cover is going to be where the rain is currently located, down in the southeastern portion of our viewing area. You go down I-75, you will start to see a couple specks of some green, but we'll talk about the more widespread rain showers that we are currently seeing. And let's break it down from north to south. So our northernmost counties, just some upper level cloud cover. It's not too dense in nature. There are some gaps in those clouds, but I did point it up here kind of to the northeast because Lake Oconee, Eatonton, Sparta, areas of Hancock County, they were seeing some scattered showers as of early this morning. Looks like all of those have fizzled out. We have to go all the way down here into Johnson County, where we have a couple specks of some sprinkles, a cluster of some more widespread rain right here on the corner of Emmanuel County, Jefferson County, and Johnson County. And within the core of this, that's where we're going to spot some occasional areas of some yellow, and you might even notice some flashes of some orange that could be popping up in a couple of these, just indicating some slightly heavier rainfall, but not necessarily anything of the thunderstorm nature. And you got a good glimpse of what that rain did just look like in downtown Dublin. If you can't really necessarily remember it, let's go ahead and actually do this. Let's zoom in on downtown Dublin so you see mainly just some green colors, maybe a patch of some yellow. Well, let's flash it back to the sky cam where we can get a real-time image of how heavy and steady that rainfall looks. And it does appear probably a little bit heavier than it actually is, but I would classify this as a bit of a steady shower right now. So when we talk about those greens and we talk about those yellows, that's what we're really talking about. It's just some steady showers. And you have to really get into more of a darker green shade in order for it to be a steady shower like you're currently seeing in Dublin. But let's go ahead and flash it back down there to Lawrence County. This computer is a lot more sensitive than the one back over there at the desk. But we can see this cluster of some rain does extend farther down to the south of I-16, closer to the Dexter area, all around Cadwell, and getting into northern Dodge County, where once again, some pockets of some yellow and some orange indicating some heavier rainfall than just the general green shade that we do see that is the most widespread. This cluster right here on the county line of Pulaski and Wilcox counties, just around the Pineview area. We do spot some more over here in the eastern edge of Dodge County. Everything else is just going to be in the form of a very brief and a very isolated sprinkle shower. So this is not very substantial rain whatsoever, but it is worth talking about because a lot of the models weren't even picking up on this. If I was to see this on maybe some of the models that were trying to predict what was going to happen this morning, I would have probably thrown a 20% chance of rain on the day, but overall, the 10% is still kind of covering the bases. There are plenty of areas up to the west and the northwest that have not seen anything in the way of rain. Forsyth, Roberta, Butler, Fort Valley, Warner Robins, Perry, Macon, even Jeffersonville. You guys have no idea what I'm talking about when talking about these showers because we just haven't seen any over the course of today. But east, southeast, and southern central Georgia, you guys have lucked out with at least a little bit of rain, some extra hydration from Mother Nature as we do now go into at least the midway point of the work week, but kind of kick-starting the beginning of a pretty quiet and pretty dry stretch of weather that we are going to have as we go into the end of the work week, which hopefully it's not going to be too long-lived because we do continue to need some more rain. But obviously, we've been off to a pretty good start for the month of May. We'll take that. We'll take a nice dry spell, and hopefully we can welcome back some rain chances here pretty soon once again. Here's your satellite and radar image down to the south of us. And I guess this does have everything in the way of rain, but this is all going to be courtesy of our stalled boundary that really made its way through central Georgia as of Monday, and it just had a slow motion farther and farther down into Florida. It actually sprouted some tornado-warned storms and even some strong and severe thunderstorms down in the Florida Peninsula yesterday. Saw a couple meteorologists down in Tampa and down in Orlando doing some severe weather coverage with those yesterday. But it will continue to push farther and farther down, and it's actually going to get a reinforcing push and a nudge from another front that is looking to pass through central Georgia as we go from tonight into the early morning hours tomorrow. Now, this front isn't looking to send us anything in the way of some widespread rain. It is going to be kind of one of those invisible fronts, but we will talk about the signs of it coming in. All right, that's all the work I need with the computer. Going to slide that out of the way, and now I'm just going to work with the green screen. 71 for a high temperature yesterday. That cloud cover did a great job of blocking all of our sunshine, not really letting any of that solar radiation hit the surface. Obviously, we did see a warm up from your morning low into your afternoon high, but only a temperature spread of somewhere in the neighborhood of around maybe 12 degrees or so. Obviously 59 to start out the day, right around the 60-degree mark. That's where we should have been, but definitely not where we should have been for your average high temperature. And definitely getting into the territory, I would probably say one of our lower high temperatures on record for yesterday all time. 96, the record high temperature back in 2011, 40 degrees for a morning low record set back in 1969. Of course, we did have that 1/100th of an inch of rain recorded at Middle Georgia Regional Airport, and your year departure is now just above 4 inches. So 4 inches and some change, kind of below where we should be at this point of the year. Sunrise time, 6:38 a.m. yesterday, and then the sunset was around 8:24. Kind of hard to picture that sunrise time because it was a cloudy start, very similar to today. And sunset time, obviously, it was kind of hard to get an image of that with the widespread cloud cover we continue to have in the picture. So 71, it is just the latest addition to the below average train that we have had for the month of May. In fact, it's matching the lowest high temperature that we've had so far in the month of May. Back last Friday is when we also had a very low high temperature. But 10 out of 12 days so far have been blue boxes, have been those below average numbers. Only 2 days have been above average, but we are going to add to that tally as we go into the back half of your 7-day forecast. But not necessarily today. Here's a look at your hour-by-hour warm-up where the cloud cover will eventually fall apart that we currently have in place, and that's going to result in a warm-up throughout the 70s, eventually into the upper 70s where we are flirting with 80 degrees before today's all said and done around the 5 and 6 p.m. hours. My high temperature just 1 degree higher at 81 degrees. Now, if the cloud cover hangs on a little bit longer than we're anticipating, then of course your temperatures won't climb this high up to the 80 to 81 degree mark. You might be somewhere, say, in the 70s later on today. We're only looking at spotty sprinkles. Maybe I should have changed that to spotty light showers, looking at it back in retrospect, because that's what southeastern central Georgia is currently dealing with. But overall, I wanted to emphasize that whatever you see in the way of rain today is going to be of the lighter nature, and that's what it has been so far. Clearing later today, and that is what we will see as we go into future view here, which is now finally doing a good job of doing its homework and picking apart of what the current satellite and radar imagery does look like. But it does appear we'll continue to see some clearing from the northwest down to the southeast. Still holding on to that cloud cover and maybe a light shower or a sprinkle down in our south and southeasternmost counties. But that should clear out as we head into evening commute home time, as you make your way out the door for any dinner plans later on this evening. Mostly sunny skies, and we are going to start to see a shift in the wind direction coming in from the northwest. And then you are going to notice this line of some broken cloud cover and maybe a sprinkle shower where you did see some of those colors holding together a lot better back up into the north and northwest portion of the state. This is that next frontal boundary that I was talking about. It's not necessarily going to be invisible. I mean, we can spot it with this broken cloud cover that does pass through, but that's going to be really the only indication that it does come through. And obviously, all that cloud cover really fizzles out by the time we see it actually make its entrance into central Georgia sometime early tomorrow morning, and then it is looking to reinforce our cooler and drier air in the forecast, which Future View is showing you that drier air at work throughout your Thursday afternoon. Not a single cloud in the sky, steady breeze filtering in throughout the afternoon. It looks like it's going to be the same story throughout your Friday, maybe 1 or 2 high-level clouds that try to creep in, but an abundance of sunshine as we close out the work week before some more clouds creep back into the forecast as we go into Saturday, which we're starting to get a first glimpse of, and we'll talk about what your forecast is shaping up for the second day of the weekend ahead. Here's a look at the next 3 days. 81 for that high temperature today. I really should have put that cloudy decreasing icon. I said it yesterday and I forgot to mention it as of this morning, but overall, partly cloudy skies. I think that is going to be a good classification for today, especially in the areas that aren't receiving rain so far. They have seen their peaks of some blue sky so far, and they have seen their occasional moments of some shade. So it has been a partly cloudy day by all classifications for some areas, mainly west central Georgia, but areas like Dublin, areas like Eastman, areas like Wrightsville, all they've known so far is kind of on and off rain with a very gloomy and dreary atmosphere. Tomorrow morning, I think is going to be a little bit cooler than what we did see this morning, where I definitely kind of overestimated how far the temperatures would drop down. 56, we didn't quite make it there. I think we recorded a morning low of around 58, 59 degrees at the lowest. But tomorrow should be somewhere in the mid 50s because it is going to be a lot of a clearer start, but we're not necessarily going to watch that slightly cooler air filter in until we get more so into the afternoon. Now 79, definitely not cool whatsoever, but when you compare it to average for this time of year of 85 degrees, that's definitely a couple degrees short, and that's in light of a crystal clear afternoon. If we didn't have the passage of this frontal boundary, we would very likely see these numbers climb well up into the upper 80s and maybe even into the low 90s in light of crystal clear sunny conditions, because there's nothing in the way of cloud cover that is halting our warm up into the afternoon. So that's what role that frontal boundary is playing on your afternoon high temperature. Going into Friday morning, that's when I think you feel that cooler air. I think it's really just going to be that point. Maybe a little bit into Thursday evening, we might watch this number cool down pretty quickly because we have to make our way down from 79 degrees all the way to a morning low of 48 degrees overnight into your Friday morning. So that's a temperature drop of right there around 31 degrees. So your numbers are going to begin to drop as soon as we lose that sunlight throughout your Thursday, which is really going to be sometime around 8:30 to 9 o'clock, obviously with the later sunset that we continue to have each and every day. So it's really going to be more so the Thursday nighttime hours that you're finally starting to feel some of those cooler temperatures getting down to the 60s, but more so early on Friday morning where you're going to walk out to some low 50s. Maybe some of the warmest numbers will still be in the mid 50s, but some areas are going to take it a step or two farther. I'm looking at Dublin, I'm looking at Eastman, who are always typically a little bit cooler than the rest of the bunch on your current temperature map. So 48, we could see some numbers in the upper 40s, maybe even as low as the mid 40s as you walk outside on Friday. So I would just make plans to get one last use out of that winter coat, maybe that light jacket, whatever it is that you've kind of had on standby for those couple of mornings that have been chilly as of recently. This does look to be actually one of the last times that we might dip below the 50-degree mark for a couple of months' time, because then once we get into Friday afternoon, high temperature of 83, which is once again still going to be below average by a couple of degrees, and it's going to be pretty close to that 80-degree mark, but it is a sign of a warming trend, 79 into 83 as we go into Friday. So after Friday morning, your warming trend will officially kick off. Before we talk a little bit more about those numbers, let's talk about the winds, because I did show you the passage of that frontal boundary overnight tonight into tomorrow morning, and on the backside of that frontal boundary, that's where the winds are going to get a tad bit breezy, not near as gusty as what we see in the North Georgia mountains or the Western Carolina mountains. That's where we actually see the slope of the mountains enhancing some pockets of some red, and that's going to be some gustier winds that you can find in areas closer up to Asheville, maybe getting into Clayton, Georgia. And then you go into central Georgia, where we start to see some occasional gusts pop up to maybe 20 miles per hour. This is late morning into the early afternoon, and then as we progress into the evening hours, that breeze is going to start to fall apart as we get closer and closer to sunset time. But overall, I'm not talking about anything that's going to be super, super gusty. In fact, I think the winds yesterday probably going to be breezier than what we have in store for tomorrow. But it is going to be a note in your forecast because it's obviously going to be a story of nothing in the way of anything in the sky but some bright sunshine. So obviously sunshine, high temperature going to be somewhere right around 80 degrees, but the winds are going to be another talking factor that we do have with your forecast. And then they are going to subside as we go into the beginning of the weekend. Here's the clearest indication I can give you of this dry or kind of invisible front coming through. You can see a whole lot of dry air up here in the northern portion of the state. And we've kind of held on to these light green shades all throughout the last couple of days. We've had our drier moments than others, but overall, this frontal boundary sweeps through and it not only pushes all the rest of our moisture out of the picture, but it is also going to nudge that other frontal boundary that is being very stubborn to move through the peninsula of Florida. It's going to nudge that farther down to the south and the southeast. But by the time we go into early on Saturday morning, take a look at this. Already seeing a shift in the winds and continuing to flow in off the Atlantic coast. And what that is doing is going to increase our moisture content pretty quickly. So we are going to start to welcome back a little bit of humidity in the forecast as early as Saturday. Keep that in mind when we do talk about your weekend rain chances, because the humidity is only going to continue to go up, but very thankfully not soaring up into these noticeable or super muggy categories like we would have with dew point temperatures, say, in the 60s and the 70s. I think a couple dew point temperatures will creep into the lower half of the 60s box, this light green box, but I still don't see any signs of that super muggy summertime humidity returning. So that's the one factor that we have been kind of lacking in terms of not having anything in the way of a summertime forecast. But like I mentioned, it is the middle of the month of May. We're getting into Memorial Day weekend next weekend. A lot of high school graduations going to be next weekend. And of course, it is going to be kind of the official, unofficial, whatever you may deem it or claim it as, start to the summertime season. Well, back to your regularly scheduled programming as we go into Saturday and Sunday. Making that return back above average and flirting with the 90-degree mark both Saturday and Sunday afternoons. First time we've done that in a couple of weeks. We did hit the 90-degree mark once in the month of April on April 17th. So it's going to be about a month removed from that date that we are looking to return to the 90s, but still going to hover just below average by a couple of degrees, which Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, this afternoon, tomorrow afternoon, and Friday afternoon, I'm not saying they're going to feel chilly whatsoever. They're just cooler when you put them in comparison to your average high temperature of 85, where we should be this time of year. They are still going to feel nice and pleasant. In fact, I think they're going to be splendid days to spend outdoors, especially given the fact that there's not going to be a single cloud in the sky Thursday and Friday. With the return of warmer temperatures on Saturday and Sunday, we could be welcoming back some more moisture, but also when you start to get these warmer temperatures, it can become dangerous, especially those hot surfaces. So I will always continue to remind you that you need to make sure that you're keeping your furry friends off the concrete and off the asphalt when taking them on walks. I know it's a beautiful afternoon. It's a beautiful afternoon to maybe go on a light jog or a run around the neighborhood with your pooch, break a little bit of a sweat, but make sure you're keeping them off those hot surfaces, trying to walk them over by some grassy areas, because if it is going to be too hot for you outside, because obviously I wouldn't go barefoot walking on temperatures of 125 or 140 degrees, then of course it is going to be too hot for your furry friends. But now let's talk about your morning lows, because this will be a factor, I'm sure, tomorrow morning and Friday morning. I wouldn't even doubt that we go a little bit lower than this number of 55 as we walk out the door tomorrow, but I definitely think Friday morning is going to be the coolest of the bunch, somewhere in the neighborhood of around 10 degrees below average, maybe even a little bit more. We could see even a couple areas dip down into the mid-40s as you walk outside on Friday. And we haven't felt temperatures like that in quite a while. And if we have felt them, it's only been for about one day at a time, which very thankfully this is going to be the case this time. And I think it's really going to be the last time that we dip below that 50-degree mark, because that average load continues to climb up. It's not often that you get in the neighborhood of around 10 to 15 degrees below your average low temperature, but hey, crazier things have been done weather-wise. We'll just keep our fingers crossed that this is the last time I'm telling you to pack that light layering as you head out the door, and take a look at that substantial warming trend Saturday into Sunday. And we're already back above average with your morning low temperatures on Sunday after hovering somewhere around 12 degrees below as of Friday morning. So here's a look at your long-range models. This is 9 p.m. on Saturday. Don't really pay attention to the timing. Just know that you are going to see these shades of green and some blue mainly bubble up as we go into the afternoon and evening hours. It does look like we see a better return of moisture as we get into the end of the weekend on Sunday. Now, this isn't set in stone. Obviously, these yellows and these oranges are indicating some heavier rainfall rates. This is also not saying that we have something in the way of thunderstorms in store on Sunday afternoon. Is the potential there? Yes, but the European is not even agreeing with the GFS right there. It's only showing maybe some splotchy areas of some blue, and it doesn't look like this is more of an organized weather system. This is just winds propelling more and more moisture off the Atlantic coast, maybe off the Gulf Coast, or maybe just up from the south down in the Florida Peninsula that is kind of interacting with our warmer temperatures that are beginning to settle in. But those pop-up chances, they continue into the beginning of next week. On Monday, they continue into Tuesday, where you'll see a couple splotches of some green and some blue, but there are signs of more widespread rain taking shape over to the west and the northwest of us as we go into next Wednesday, more so as we go later into the midweek, maybe closer to around Thursday. That's what I am eyeing right now for maybe another frontal boundary that could be creeping close to our neck of the woods. Until then, enjoy the beautiful stretch of weather that we do have to close out the end of the work week. Again, Friday morning going to be a tad bit cooler than any other time frame that you will see for the next week ahead. After that, looks like we're kind of getting into that typical summertime stretch of weather. High temperatures near 90, and with the return of moisture in our forecast, we're going to look at having some pop-up rain chances, which will probably increase, and they'll fluctuate a little bit as we get closer and closer. Want to see what short-range future view does have to say about them before we start to give them an uptick. So the 10% are written in pencil right now. Just know that each and every afternoon and evening, Saturday, all the way into next Tuesday, is going to have the opportunity for rain, but it's nothing worth canceling any plans for, and I think you should be good to go for anything in the way of wanting to hit the pool or maybe getting that first lake weekend in as of this weekend, and it's kind of giving you a taste for what's to come, hopefully, fingers crossed, as we go into Memorial Day weekend, which will get kick-started as of next week. So that's going to do it for your extended forecast. Actually, a couple things that we had to talk about today. So hopefully you enjoyed that breakdown of the rain and talking about the nice weather that we do have to end the work week. We'll talk a lot more about it coming up at 11 a.m. once again tomorrow.